Hello, everyone, and welcome to the K2 Podcast Snack Break. This is where I tell you about everything you need to know about a particular subject in just under 10 minutes, quick enough for you to take a look at while you're on break at work. Today's snack is all about mail-in voting and everything that you need to know, so let's get right into it. So we've seen a lot of questions and skepticism regarding mail-in voting. Now, some are okay with it and some are just frankly not okay with it. But what you may not know is we potentially could have a president who's not on the ballot for the 2020 election. Now you're probably thinking, well, Kevin, that's impossible. How could we have somebody who's president who's not on the ballot? Well, we're going to take a look at that today. So as it currently stands, Joe Biden isn't the only Democrat who could become president in the 2020 election. Now, what you may not know, according to the Presidential Succession Act of 1972, the Speaker of the House is actually third in line to take office should the presidency become vacant, and also should the vice president's position also become vacant. And as it stands in the current order of succession, Nancy Pelosi is the only Democrat who could potentially become president other than Joe Biden. So you might be wondering, well, Kevin, how is this possible? Well, what you may not know is that on January 20th by noon, if we don't have a clear-cut winner and the election results are not made 100% clear on who won, whether it be Joe Biden or Donald Trump, then Nancy Pelosi is scheduled to take over the presidency on January 20th at noon should the election results not be counted and tallied up, as a lot of people are anticipating with the mail-in voting. Now you might say, well, Kevin, it's fine. The USPS is going to take care of it. You know, they've been delivering mails for years. They're okay. It's not going to be a problem. But there's a lot of things that you guys may not realize about the United States Postal Service. One of those things is they're still delivering mail by donkeys and mules. You know, and this is supposed to get election ballots out to citizens of America. As you can see over my shoulder here, this is pulled from the actual website of the USPS. You can go look it up right there for yourself. I'll put the link in the description if you're kind of skeptical about it. To be fair, it's not a widely practiced method of delivering mail, but it is a method of delivering mail by donkey and mules still used today in 2020 by the USPS. Another thing that we've seen growing concerns about is the coronavirus. A lot of what we've been hearing is that, polling locations will make it more difficult or will aid in giving people and spreading the virus. So that's what the main concern is. But I have an article here from a publication called The Nation. Now, this guy from The Nation actually went to a postal service and interviewed a guy about the growing concerns over coronavirus. Now, last Thursday, Charles Martin showed up at the post office in Cincinnati, Ohio, where he works as a letter carrier. When he arrived, he learned that the clerk in the station had been quarantined after she displayed symptoms of COVID-19. I heard about it from somebody else in the station because management hasn't announced it yet. Martin told me half the station still doesn't know. He keeps going into work, though he said, after all, the number of packages has started to ramp up since Ohio's governors closed bars and restaurants on March 15th. We're an essential service, so we've got to keep going, Martin said, but there's a lot of older employees at my station. I'm worried about spreading it to them. The oldest carrier, he said, was more than 75 years old, and as of Tuesday, that carrier and all the others at Martin Station were showing up, still delivering packages, though many of them were afraid to interact with not only their co-workers and their customers. So you can kind of see the growing concerns that this particular employee has surrounding the station inside of Cincinnati, Ohio. And he goes on to say that, even with the closures of a lot of stuff and people trying to remain in contact, they've seen an influx in packages and letters and such through the USPS, which is to be expected considering people still need to get things done, contact one another. They're not able to see each other, so they're using the mail as an alternative method to stay in contact. Now, in this same article from the National, he goes on to say that last week the USPS management rolled out a new new protocols that require some employees to wear gloves and guarantee masks to any employee who wants one. They also mandated that all surfaces be disinfected and wiped down, but postal workers uniformly told me they cannot access any of the protective equipment and sanitary supplies. Even 2 other employees further said that as of Monday, their station's management still hadn't even addressed the coronavirus in the stand-up meetings at the post office. So he also says, I describe their response as a complete lacking, said Lawrence, who is also a carrier who works in the Western Ohio location. Now, this is the thing. They're saying that the polling locations are, going to be a breeding ground for this. But from what we've just read from this article here by The Nation, they're kind of having the same concerns with inside the USPS, the post office. It's kind of interesting to see that some of the concerns that we're seeing about polling locations are same concerns that some of the employees are bringing up with inside the Postal Service. And in addition to that, we also have to think that all of these things that they're bringing up, we can do those at the polling locations. And in addition to that, they're saying they're seeing an influx of mail. They're seeing an influx of customers. They're seeing an influx of packages. Could you imagine what 100 million pieces or more of mail-in ballots could do to the United States Postal Service? That's going to cause more interactions, more customers to flock into these typically smaller locations, and somehow that's supposed to fix it all? I mean, yeah, you can mail it from your house, but some people like to go to the physical location, see to it that their ballot gets into the hands of somebody, and that'll be delivered. And we're not even talking about the potentially ballots that are lost, rejected, not filled in properly. We've heard stories of just ballots being rejected simply because the signature did not match what the government had on file. Now, don't take it from me. If you'd like some further proof of this, you could just take a look at this article here that I have from the Washington Post. Now, this Washington Post article goes on to say, according to the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, of more than 140 million votes cast in the 2016 general election, 23.7% were actually via mail. Of those, roughly 33.2 million mail-in ballots that the election administrators received and tabulated, approximately 1% weren't counted. Reasons for this was rejection. Reason for the rejections included the signature on the ballot not matching the signature on the state's record, the ballot not even having a signature, a problem with the return envelope, or just missing the deadline. By contrast, a third fewer ballots cast in person were rejected in 2016. So you have the article there from the Washington Post who kind of backs up these claims that, the ballots are being rejected at much higher numbers than if these were the votes were casted in person. Now, we also saw Mike Baker, who was recently on the Joe Rogan podcast, and we're going to take a look at some of the comments and concerns that they were discussing about the mail-in voting process.
It's a touch of death. But can you imagine if we have an election where you do this and then you don't know the results for 5 or 6 or 7 days because they're still counting ballots, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Can you imagine what that reporting is going to be like? And all the paranoia on both sides.
So you hear Mike Baker there say it could be 5 or 6 or 7 days until they actually get the votes all counted and tallied up. But we also heard comments from President Trump saying that it could actually be potentially even longer than the short period of time that Mike Baker mentioned. So let's take a listen to that audio from President Trump.
You're not going to know the November 3rd election results. I'm talking for the country. It could be for months and months. I mean, actually, it could be for years because you'll never. They sent and they plan to send these ballots to everybody that's ever walked in the state of Nevada. It will be a disaster.
So there you have it. You just heard the president's comments on what he feels like could take much longer than what Mike Baker had mentioned. Now, with that being said, it's not my job to say how you should or should not feel about the mail-in voting process, but I at least wanted to bring to your attention some of the conversations and some of the things that we should be talking about when it comes to mail-in voting. And so we're going to see how this all plays out. But until then, if these ballots aren't counted up and taken care of in a timely fashion by January 20th by noon, we may just see President Nancy Pelosi. Just think about that. You guys take care. Thanks for tuning in.